Alrighty, hello. We are back with another patch analysis for the VOD channel. I really enjoyed doing it last time, so I'm just deciding to go do it again. Obviously, didn't get crazy amounts of views. I don't really care. It's kind of fun to talk about this stuff, and for the very few people out there that do just want to hear me ramble about this stuff and give nuanced opinions on it for an extended period of time, y'all are obviously very welcome to just watch this and enjoy it as well. This patch, especially, I want to talk about. I've sort of in general been trying to stay away from Twitter as of late. It's gotten too unbearable, both in Splatoon and just overall. But over this last week, I was at a LAN as a Genesis. We got second, by the way, me subbing with Red Sun. That was a fun time. But I was also looking at Twitter a lot during that to keep up with people at the event, and I also ended up seeing a lot of people talking about this patch. And if you've seen anything yourself, you know that reactions have been very not great. People are extremely upset. People are kind of just winging shit at everything. Which again, normal for the internet, but it's been like egregiously bad this time around. In typical me fashion, I like to have a bit more of a nuanced opinion on things, so I'd like to talk about that for people again who want to hear that and do want to hear my thoughts on these new weapons and stuff like that. For context, by the way, people sort of tend to assume if I don't hate a thing that I automatically love it. It's like, no, I wish Dreadringer got Torpedo as well. That would have been awesome. But it got Beacon. So instead, I'm going to sit here and try to think what I can do with the Beacon instead. Like, sure, Torpedo would have been awesome. It probably would have been like way more usable overall, way more meta overall. Instead, as Beacon, it's going to be a bit more of a niche, but I still like the main weapon. I still like the Slosher class. I still like experimenting with things. So I'm going to think a bit about what you can do with a Beacon on a Dreadringer and kind of stuff like that for all these weapons. Just because I'm trying to explain why they were added to the game or trying to think of ways they could be used doesn't mean that I think they're better than other options. Or anything like that. Like, people sort of tend to just assume you don't hate the thing, you love it. It's like, no, we have nuanced opinions here. And that's why I like talk about this in the video and not, again, in tweets that are character limited and no tone and stuff like that. So yeah, with that said, going to be going through these changes, talk about my opinions on the new weapons, the balance changes. I'm going to do balance changes first. They're very short, and also just sort of sets context for the state of the game these things are being added into. But trust me, I have plenty of thoughts on these new main weapons and these kits coming up. So first, on the balance changes, is something I'm personally pretty excited about. It is a change for Big Swig. Both the flicks, both horizontal and vertical flicks, are having their paint reduced by 10%. Currently, it takes 10% to do a flick, like your current ink tank. So you have 10 flicks per tank. Now it's being reduced by 10%, so it's going to be down to 9. This is basically the same change that Dreadringer got not long ago, just a couple patches ago. It might have even been the last balance patch. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it must have been, actually. So this is nice. Swig will gladly take this. Something that I did try Swig for quite a while in competitive. I honestly might try it again because the recent Inkstorm changes are really neat for it. It's definitely one of the better weapons at just botting Inkstorm, and also one of the few that can play into a more aggressive side as well. It's like, for example, you can sort of get this Inkstorm, like send it out for your teammates to help heal them, and obviously still do all the like displacement and painting and chip damage stuff to your opponents as well. But also, it really wants to play off that itself. It's a great weapon at applying chip damage, and it like kind of is just shy of kills pretty often. So a little bit of extra damage to opponents means you can close out kills a lot more. But also, unlike other rollers, you don't spend a lot of time sharking with Big Swig. Like, you want to spend a lot of painting. It's rolling around mode is actually usable. Unlike most other rollers, it's a lot faster. It paints a lot more. It's quite ink efficient in that mode. So you actually spend a lot of time out of the ink between those things, flicking, rolling, all that. So the more time you're out of the ink, the more ink recovery or health recovery from Inkstorm, will like help you out. So I sort of see a niche for Big Swig developing. It already was nice before as well with dealing with crab tank back in the day. That's why I played it originally and sort of fell out of it, is whenever there's like multi crab tank comps everywhere in competitive play, Big Swig just sits under a ledge, verticals twice, and breaks the crab without it really being able to shoot back. Really stupid, kind of similar to stuff that Splatooners can do. So that was a good time. Even though crab's not around as much, it's still there sometimes. There's still some objects you want to be shredding. Just in general now, like recent Inkstorm changes, again, I think something could be researching for this weapon. I at least want to mess with it a little bit. Again, like I said at the start, it doesn't mean I think Big Swig's going to be meta. Everyone should play it right now. Just try to see what it can actually maybe do with it in a competitive setting if you're curious, or if you just enjoy the weapon in general, even casually in any other context. This change, I'm sure you'll be feeling it. It's really nice. Like right now, I run like last ditch effort and like a main and 2 subs of ink resist. Ink saver main on this weapon just to make it like feel more continuous when I'm playing it. So this will be greatly felt. I can probably take off less effort for comeback now, or maybe I can remove like a little bit of that ink saver, make up more gear space for other things. So this will feel really great. Next up is Zimmy and mini splatling. There's a nice buff for it. It basically now will paint more underneath your feet when you're firing. Zimmy, I don't really think like is a hot debate, a hot take to say that its kits are pretty limited right now in terms of competitive play. First Swamp Hammer like is fun if you know how to play the mini like well, but it's not obviously like gonna be breaking anything. And Zimmy as well, like Bubble is not in the best spot. Recently in the last patch they made it like 190p on the big bubbler. So if Bubble ever does become prominent, does become a good like counter meta strategy or something like that, it really takes off. Like Zimmy will be a good weapon to get a lot of them and still be a good like fighting main weapon as well. I don't think this is prevalent right away, but maybe something like that again happens in the future. This buff will be felt because it's kind of similar to Big Swig. Right now, like there's sort of a problem with the build because like Zimmy in theory is super mobile. People love run speed on it. Its base strafe speed is really high, so it kind of just kites around and that's the way it fights. But it gets caught in enemy ink a lot, so you also have to run like ink resistance as well in a pretty big quantity. Like usually, I don't see people do one sub of ink resistance on Zimmy. It's always at least two, but sometimes even like up to a main. And that's because getting caught in enemy ink so much kind of restricts that movement. That's the whole point of the weapon. So if you're getting more pain on your feet, getting caught in enemy ink less, you can run more of other abilities, not just ink resistance, and you can actually naturally play into the perks of the weapon without being so gear dependent. So again, for people who do like Zimmy or just mini in general, or if Zimmy ever does actually kind of take off in a bit of a like off meta like world somewhere in the future where Bubble is better, this buff will be felt. So it's really nice to see. Okay, and lastly on buffs, we have one weird nerf to talk about in a second after that. But last on buffs is Glugaz, and this is really nice for it as well. They've increased the paint by about 10%, which is pretty nice because for people who've played Glugaz, I don't really think I need to tell you. It's not a surprise to you. Painting is not the weapon's specialty in any capacity. It's kind of the weapon's all about just dealing damage, getting kills, and that's definitely not going to change. But hey, you're going to get a bit more paint while you're doing so, which will help you move around more, help you trap opponents a little bit more, and also be building special quite a bit more. And for context, we'll talk about it again in a second. One of the weapons coming this season is Glug Deco that has Inkzuka. So that's obviously a good special. I don't really need to talk much about that. This means Glug Deco might actually get some specials on the board in the game that it's in. It might get like 3 or 4 Zukas instead of 1. That's kind of nice. So we take it. And lastly, again, not too sure where this nerf came from, honestly. I know that like reflux missile spam is definitely still a thing, especially in Turf War, especially in like even like Japan. It's happening quite a lot in like Splatzone's competitive tournaments, stuff like that. But this nerf is to the first charge level. This isn't tap shots. So they've increased ink consumption for up to the first charge level by 17%. Unless they mean like anything up to it, as if like taps included. But I sort of read this as like the charge from tap shot to first level charge will take more ink. Which mostly hurts the longer range shots and also trying to like charge to insta kill up close. Because even if you have like very little range and a wide spread on the first level charge, it does increase the damage, so you can make like a 1 level charge, one shot someone who's right in front of you. It's mostly hurting that, which to me again is sort of unfortunate, because this is kind of further influencing Reflux to either just hang back and completely paint spam or do a lot of like just full charge shots. It's sort of removing the middle ground that I really enjoyed when I used to play it a lot. That was like I could be painting and then someone could push me and I like start fighting them with like first level charges or like partial charges, stuff like that, to threaten a lot more damage, but still like engage them close range. Now they're sort of saying like, no, you hang back and tap shot, or you look for kills with full charges. You don't really want to be partialing that much. We're punishing you if you partial a lot. Which again, I think is just strange. This is probably the change I understand the least out of this update. The other ones are just nice quality of life changes for a few weapons that needed it. Or that at least appreciate it. This just sort of feels random. So here's overall how I'm feeling about this. And I've both used Reflux and Big Swig in competitive in the past and liked them both, and now sort of evolved past them and started playing a lot of sloshers again. But sometimes I have intrusive thoughts about them. This change makes the intrusive thoughts about Big Swig a bit louder. Those voices are getting louder. I kind of want to try it again. Reflux, I think this kills it for me. Because again, I really liked playing it dynamically, kind of like trying to fake the opponent out, look like I'm tap shotting and they come rushing me down and I'm actually ready to engage them, stuff like that. Instead of just being hyper polarized, either super support passive painting or looking for kills but not painting with your full charges. It seems like they're encouraging that more. Again, strange. So I'm not too interested anymore, I don't think. So one problem solved, a new one made. No way you could look at it, at least for me. But yeah, interesting changes, again, quite small. Also 2 point for special changes here that really don't make a difference. 52 gal, 190 to 200. It's still 200 point special on a 52 gal, so gonna get plenty of whales. Then parry 190p to 200 splashdown, again similar. Sorry, hiccup. Making a change to splashdown, a bit strange. It's probably mostly for casual play. Okay, there it is. There's the hiccup. We can keep going. Yeah, this is probably mostly for casual play. Because obviously end parry's not doing any crazy things in competitive. But okay, I guess they just felt it's necessary. Whatever, doesn't change a lot. Another nice thing. Oh, I didn't even see this before. I did dedicated poses to repping Ingopolis for Doolies, Brill, Stringers, and Splatoonus. I'm curious to see what those look like. That's actually, I completely missed that before. Yeah. Yeah, I'm clearly going to give some more context to these changes as well, because sometimes people are like, what are the devs thinking? And they forget that like the devs literally explain what they're thinking. I wish they'd do it in a bit more detail, but here we have a note. For multiplayer, we've added new main weapons and adjusted some main weapons to make them easier to handle for players to use them frequently. So these are just small changes. Again, the boss we saw, the Big Swig, Glug, and Mini. Basically, they're saying these are designated to people who main them, users who use them frequently. If you're a main of these weapons, you've probably felt some of these issues before, like Glug winning a little more paint, Zimmy getting stuck in ink, Big Swig being a little too ink hungry. They're just kind of saying like, hey, we acknowledged you. If you specialize in these weapons, that's cool. Here's a little quality of life buff for you. And yeah, like, sure, for people who like those, like, take it. It'd be fun. And again, new season patches are focused on new content. They're not focused on balance changes. Like, they include them, but they're never the focus. And they're, as always, stating that our next update is planned for mid-season of fresh season 2024. It should focus on balance adjustments. So people are always like, where's the big changes right now? Yeah, I wish they nerfed Pencil too. I wish they reworked Cooler too. Like, I'm not a big fan of fighting these things all the time. But I also wasn't expecting to see big changes in this update, because this is the pattern they've been following for well over half a year now. Like a year now, basically. I don't know why we're all surprised. Anyway, I guess it should be said. Yeah, anyway, as the fun balance changes out of the way, I want to talk about the thoughts on these new weapons and new kits, because there's a lot to think about. First, let's talk about the dualies. Dowser Dualies FF, and they give a quick description for people who have missed the trailers or kind of weren't too sure what you were looking out for with these, kind of what the gimmicks of the weapons are. So these dualies, their shots in the spread fire mode are pretty long range. We'll have to see exactly in game what it does look like. To me, my sort of estimates looking at it seemed like it's kind of between like 96 gal and squeezer range, kind of leaning towards 96 gal, which still makes it the longest range dualie. And in the spread fire mode, it has only one dodge roll, but it's a pretty long range one. And when you do perform that dodge roll, it also does a stance change on the weapon, or kind of a form change, kind of like ballpoint, flings a squeezer, stuff like that, where there's two firing modes. It changes you into a close range firing mode. That's still like decent range. It's a closer range mode, you could say, but the fire rate goes up a lot. Looks kind of like a 4 frame or like five frame fire rate, kind of like ends up. But maybe it's even 4. I wasn't quite too sure. It's hard to tell in the trailers. Yeah, so basically, I like to kind of call this squeezer dually. Is like, you have these two firing modes. One is long range, one is much shorter range, and paints a lot better. It is like faster firing. I guess in theory, squeezer tap shots, if you're fast enough at it, is faster firing in the tap form, but for most people, that's not the case. Yeah, I'm very curious to see what sort of happens with this. Oh, also the kit. We saw, it doesn't say here, but we saw from the trailers, it has Ink Mine and Killer Whale. Which another thing that people were confused about, but I sort of see it. This is, it's quite a lot like Nova. Like, it's sort of a combination in my mind between like Nova and Squeezer, in the sense that, like, again, you have the stance change kind of stuff, the form change stuff of Squeezer on how you do your shots, like the different firing modes you have. It's kind of like Nova in the sense that it's still a dually, so it's highly mobile. And we saw from the trailer that like its damage is definitely pretty low. It's either a 4 or a 5 shot. I'm gonna lean probably 4 shot, but it could have even been 5. But because you have so much mobility and so much range, it's kind of okay. Like it's sort of built to just be poking at the enemy constantly. But the main difference here, also similar to Nova, because you have the sub from Anarchy and the special from Phil, which I think is probably the better combination they could have given it. The difference between something like Nova and this, though, is that you actually like have the dodge roll, the turret stance, for bullets that you suddenly become hyper accurate, hyper fast fire rate. So you can be doing the thing where you just again high strafing in the spread fire mode, strafing around a lot, using your long range just to poke at the enemy, just get a lot of paint down, be an annoying presence that just has a very large sphere of influence, very long range. But if someone does engage you, you just roll backwards or like roll to the side and you just in the turret stance and you just melt them. Like it won't be as fast of a kill time as something like Dapple turret stance, but you're gonna have like 4 times the range of it. So it's not gonna be nearly as frail as a lot of things that are more focused on that like high mobility aspect. So it's gonna have a great capacity to just kill you. In a similar way, if you try to space it out, like if you're an anchor weapon that has a little bit more range than it, we're trying to hide from it, like it can dodge roll at you and then melt you with its turret stance mode. So this feels like a pretty flexible weapon. And again, the kit also sort of plays into that, like Ink Mine. If you can just kind of place that between you and your opponent, it's another factor in that, like, sure, your damage might be low in spread form, and like your accuracy might be low in spread form. But if they get too close to you, you just like turret stance on them. You can also just Ink Mine like as well. Like they step on an Ink Mine and then you turret stance them and you just completely obliterate them without them really having the range or mobility to catch up and like fight back. Like it's not going to be the fastest kill in the world, but it's there and it's should be a quite advantaged fight for you. Then Whale as well as just general chip damage, general information, and it's also really nice for something with long range to be poking like that. People say that Whale is pretty weak. I think it's more so a symptom of the weapons that it's on, because it has a lot of similar strengths of missile, and we know how that went in Splatoon 2. Like it's a really easy to use, fast to use special that gives you information and chip damage and displacement on the opponent like reliably. It's basically impossible to mess up, especially after the recent like quality of life changes to it. Like the only other weapon that actually like shoots bullets and is also aggressive, like or kind of more flexible, like Sploosh is aggressive but it has like no range, is 52, and Whale works pretty well for 52 in my opinion anyway. And people who like 52 gal in the past can still like have been making it work in this game well. So this is probably the next weapon that's most comparable to it in the sense of like you actually first of all just shoot bullets. You're a dually, but you shoot like a shooter effectively, and you have a very aggressive like capabilities. So like I don't know, I don't think Whale is damning this thing at all, and mine works well enough. I feel like again, I don't think anything introduced in this patch is going to be like meta defining. That's what people out there are upset about, and like that's fair to the top level players. But spoiler alert, most people out there, especially if you're watching this video, you're probably not a top player. You could probably make a lot of things work in competitive play that are not truly completely optimal, as well as the fact as competitive players are like a very small portion of this community and for this game's like population and audience. Like things that are fun and make sense are more than passable to the vast majority of players. Like I don't know, but I think this is completely fine, and even for people who are like dually mains, dually specialists, especially longer range dualies, like I'm curious to see what they can do with this. I feel like they're going to see that it's a bit more viable than their first impressions told them. Like I can't wait to see what Krim does with this. So even like someone like Jared, who I know like has tried Glug, has tried CDS a fair bit. Like this is another long range dually. Again, it's not going to be game breaking to them. I highly doubt Jared's going to be like, this is the secret meta pick guys trust. No, but like I feel like bro might find a way to use it sometimes. If nothing else, maybe enjoy it a little bit. Like I don't know, there's something here. I'm quite curious. Like the main weapon seems really strong. And the kit seems to support the ideas and the identity of the main weapon in theory, and that again that works. That's sort of the point of a kit. So I'm a fan of this dually. Really excited to see again what people who do specialize in dualies, what they might be able to make work with it. Next is a new main weapon I personally am more excited to use, or just it's actually just a class I'm more affiliated with. Their Pycho Brill 24. Its main gimmick is that it deploys shields a lot, which is a Umbrella archetype I've been wanting for a very long time. So as we sort of see in the description, also the gun is the shots from the gun are quite like focused. Like the spread is pretty dense. So yeah, the description says the Umbrella can deal high amounts of damage to even distant opponents due to the low scatter of its shots. So even at like a mid range, kind of a slosher range, sort of, you'll probably still be hitting people for like 3 shot, maybe even 2 shots sometimes, which most brawlers can barely even dream of. And also the shield has low health, but it can launch quickly and has a short recovery time. We saw in the trailer, I want to say the recovery time on the Brella was like 2.5 seconds, which is nuts. That's also the same amount of time it remains on the field if it's not broken. You can literally like just send a shield out, follow the trail in, it breaks. Sure, you have another one, it's fine. You're going to be very mobile with this, spamming shields all the time. And like Tent also spams shields all the time. Like that's its gimmick too. But they're meant to be like durable shields that are very large, and the weapon's also very sluggish to handle. Like it's very telegraphed. Like you see Tent walk forward, then it shoots, then there's a pause, and then the shield opens, and then it moves, and that shield moves very slowly. Like it works to break you into space, to break through choke points, stuff like that. Like it's fine. It's decent at what it does. But this just seems a lot more high tempo, a lot more selfish, which honestly to me seems like a more Splatoon 3 style weapon. Splatoon 3 is very fast paced. So something like this, I can just up here, shield launch, go, and then just like threaten high damage on you still. Again, gonna be pretty crazy. At least fun. It's gonna be crazy fun, I can tell you that. The kit on it is Angle Shooter and Big Bubbler. I love Angle Shooter. Anyone who knows me knows that. So I'm not complaining. I think it also sort of makes sense as well. Like people wanted Burst Bomb, sure, Burst Bomb would have been stronger, yeah, sure. That's why we didn't get it. It would have been broken. But like this weapon, because it deploys shield a lot, even though the shield regenerates quickly, you're gonna be fighting without shield quite often. Like you'll probably, especially in like higher level like situations, your shield will probably get broken in like a second, like all the time. So you're gonna have like a second or a second and a half, right, where you don't have shield yet again before you can continue to fight. So something that can paint your feet very quickly, like Angle Shooter's very cheap, immediately puts paint on the floor under you if you shoot underneath you. That's going to be well appreciated. The chip damage is nice, information is nice for kind of just helping you finish kills. I imagine a shot will do at least 60 damage, so there will be a damage combo there most likely. Like it's going to be passable. It's going to be harder to use than Burst Bomb. Like, but again, I like Angle Shooter. It's fine, and I see the reason why it's there. It's a very cheap, fast-acting tool that's just going to generally help the weapon function in those moments without shield. Again, it's extra mobility, it's extra damage, all that. Nice. And Bubble makes sense here, I think. Again, Bubbler, like I was saying with Zimmy, is generally seen as a pretty weak special in competitive play because it kind of just loses to a lot of other specials. But I think one of the problems with Bubble as well, and I've seen some other players comment on this as well, is like another problem with it is that it tends to like you struggle to get Bubble into really aggressive positions because you have to place it underneath yourself like a beacon. You can't like throw it forward. But with this, you actually will be able to get it pretty far forward, like in kind of really assertive situations, because you can deploy shield, follow that forward, and as shield breaks, drop a bubble like in the open, a lot more exposed, like what would normally be a lot more exposed, like with any other weapon. But this, you'll have the cover of your shield to bring you that far, and then from there, you actually rely on the bubble to stay alive, to block shots. As you regen a new shield, then it can keep going or whatever. Or you can even just drop the bubble and then leave. It's gonna be able to like be a lot more ratty, again, a lot more assertive is sort of the word that comes for me with where you're placing these shields. Placing these big bubbles, which should be pretty fun. And again, like with a very breakable, like low health shield as well. Something else that can like sponge up damage for you in more neutral situations. If you're staring down a weapon with more range than you, that's just gonna be nice. It's gonna be appreciated. I feel like this weapon actually might have a pretty decent competitive niche. Because Bubble is first of all, like let's talk about Brellas, because Brellas tend to suck due to latency and bugs and all that. Most people know this. When you deploy a shield, it gets a lot more consistent. It's one of the reasons like Tent is used a lot more than the other Brellas in competitive play, because like once it's put on the stage, lag kind of becomes a non-factor, or a lot less of a factor anyway than when you're like constantly flaring shield up and down like you do with like a V Brella. And this again is spamming shield all the time, so it should be a little bit more helped. The other thing too is like big bubble, at least on splat zones, has to be pretty good because even if you are like dying within the bubble, or sorry, like you don't feel safe in the bubble, you usually have to leave it due to other specials, it's still taking those resources from the enemy. So like you can put bubble like in front of zone or somewhere off like to the side of zone and make the opponent wonder like, do I throw my Booyah Bomb, my Ink Strikes, my whatever at this bubble or at zone? It kind of like opens up a 50-50 to them where they have to make a choice. Do I want that cap and then I need to fight people in the bubble without my own special to counter it? Or do I try to clear the bubble and then I have to look at zone and everything? That could be a pretty strong dynamic. As well as the fact that like even if bubble gets shredded quickly, you can't paint within the bubble. Like again, minus specials that go through it, or if the opponent rec rushes into it. But most of the time, like if you're outside the bubble shooting at it, again, even if you shred it within a second or two, that's still a second or two that like paint is not being placed by the opponent within the space of the bubble, which can be on top of zone. That means extra time the opponent can't paint. The other interesting thing too. Sorry, let me catch my breath. I've been rambling a lot. The other thing too is there's a thing with that. I'm sure y'all have probably seen on zones. There's a thing with Reef Slider where you sort of have like an insta cap cheese, the Reef Slider zones cheese as it's called, where you sort of just the explosion is so big, especially with special power, that you can just kind of instantly cap a lot of the zones in the game by just dropping a Reef Slider on it with basically no counterplay, because in one frame the whole zone just becomes the enemy's color. There's not really any way to stop a Reef Slider. It's unkillable, except for one. That is if you put a Brella Shield or a Splash Wall in front of it. Because the collision of the Reef Slider like hitbox running into those objects will break them. Like it'll immediately break a Splash Wall, immediately break a Brella Shield, but it also still stops the Reef Slider in place. So for example, like if you throw a Splash Wall in front of a zone and Reef Slider is coming into it, it'll break that Splash Wall, but Reef Slider will stop on the wall as well and not actually reach zone to cap it, or at least not all of it. This being a Brella that deploys its shield so quickly can actually sort of do something similar, I think. Like if you see a Reef Slider coming, you see where the opponent's coming from, you should have the time to open shield and launch it in that like half second it takes and intercept that Reef Slider coming in and back away so you still don't die and that Reef Slider doesn't reach zone. So like between bubble being helpful on zone and the mid weapon being an anti-cheese measure, if you know your opponent is running a weapon that like is completely there just to bot Reef Sliders like Dreadringer or something, this might be a way to deal with it. Again, Splash Walls are also a good option. If you have a Splash Wall weapon, you're able to read the opponent in time, but Splash Wall does take quite a while to start up. And the other Brellas can work too, but you're very unlikely to have the time to deploy shield and run away to not still die to the explosion because the like Reef Slider crushed your shield first and you can't use that as cover anymore. This, because it deploys so fast, I think will actually let you stay alive and deny it. So again, kind of an anti-cheese measure, but interesting to talk about. Again, just overall, I'm excited to see Umbrella in the game again. The kit is fun to me. This is the concept I wanted for a while, so even if it's not good and competitive, I'm going to 5-star this thing. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, those are the two new main weapons. Now let's talk through these kits. Some of them I will go through a lot faster than others. I don't have quite as many thoughts on them as some of the other ones. Okay. So first, these here at the top, I'll not talk about too much. Again, mostly I'm talking from a competitive perspective, and currently at least, Ladder Color Screen is very on and off as to whether or not it's even allowed in competitive context. But I still want to talk a little bit about the philosophy behind these weapons. 2 Deco has Curling Bomb back from Splatoon 2. I'm not too surprised about that. And Screen is pretty nice. People have made the jokes that Gals always get splash walls, and now it has the big splash wall. Honestly, I think that's sort of true here. Sorry. Like, walls just work so well for Gals because they're so good at just asserting themselves in space. Like, their kill time is crazy fast because their damage is so high that, like, having a wall to kind of play behind and just shoot opponents from behind it or kind of as they run through it or around it, like in the case of Splash Wall, it's just great to, like, kind of keep them cornered, keep them in a certain spot, and kind of just know where to place your shots. And this is sort of with Screen, I think, is what they're going for as well. Like, you throw Screen out in front of space that you've taken, and, like, first of all, you can just curling bomb your way into space. You can accelerate into the enemy's face super fast. In general, is kind of keep fighting them. And once you do win a fight there, you just kind of Screen to assert yourself in that. Because if they hit the Screen, they'll take a bit of damage, but also you will hear them. That's the thing people don't talk about a lot with Screen, is that the audio from the debuff is, like, super loud. Like, if an enemy is hit with that effect, you can hear, like, a crazy bubbling sound as yourself. Like, if you debuff an opponent, you hear that opponent's sound of being debuffed. So you can hear that and kind of flick over to where you hear it, follow the directional audio, and then just start, like, shooting at it. So, like, stuff like that is going to be really nice, just to be obnoxious. This thing will just find itself in space and then keep it. Again, I would like them to change Screen a little bit more to be more accessible so we can actually play it more in competitive. That'd be cool, because this would be nice to see. It's not too worth investing into right now, in my opinion, if you are a competitive player, because you might just not be able to play it in any given tournament, or any tournament set if your opponent is experiencing problems from it. So it's just like, what, man, you know, like, it's not fun to practice a thing and then not actually be able to use it, like, when it different things for foil squeeze for foil fling zone. Whereas like again, I'll talk about like what I sort of think of it. Suction bomb back on flings is really nice. I like that a lot in foil flings in Splatoon 2. That's another weapon I played a fair bit. Just can't go wrong with it. It helps you to clear your corners, and it's also another really nice painting tool. And flings with its verticals especially is very known for being able to paint a lot. So this thing will just have a lot of influence in general. Another thing too is that kind of like missiles were for it in Splatoon 2. Screen is especially you can just throw out quickly, so you can kind of like send out a bunch of vertical flicks for paint, send out a section bomb for paint, and as soon as you run out of ink, you just quickly pop your special to get like ink back, and then play off both the special and a full new ink tank to just keep going. It gives you a crazy amount of uptime, again, just on dealing damage, on putting on paint, just being overall like a hard thing to like contest. Wings, I feel like needs a damage buff back. I do miss like MPU for it a lot. One of the few whips that hasn't gotten like a damage buff or main power back that like has had it. Like most things in the game feel like they've gotten some buff back to compensate. Because your verticals just like don't kill from very far at all. But if they do give it something like that, that'd be really nice. And I guess furthermore, running through the screen also does do 30 damage, a bit of chip damage, which will make your kills more reliable. That will be a source of chip damage for you as well. Yeah, so just in general, a lot of paint, a lot of bombs in this thing. It'll be obnoxious for sure. And then as well as the fact that you're still a roller. So you sort of have a flow chart here of like paint a lot, throw a lot of bombs, like make an opening for yourself, give yourself room to work with, put a screen in front of it, and then you shark behind that screen as cover to close distance on people and like get yourself underneath a ledge or into some kind of obnoxious sharking position, like something like that. Kind of get to chain this together again, like paint mode with bomb and main weapon into ratty mode with special and main weapon. So there's something fun here for sure. Again, like with either of these, I think they're going to be meta defining. No, I don't really think anything in this list of new weapons is going to be meta defining. Again, that's what a lot of competitive players are complaining about. But man, I just want to talk about what these things can actually maybe do, kind of what their philosophy is, perhaps. And this seems fun to me. It seems like it makes sense. There is an identity here. There's a flowchart here, and I understand it, and it seems fun. I definitely want to mess with it because I do miss flings up. Again, casually. New Squiffer. This is the one kit that people seem to really like. I don't blame them. Zipcaster Squiffer has been like a hope from people, I think, since like day one. The Squiffer, unlike other chargers, does not have its charge speed impeded in the air, so you can zipcast to locations, get a fast charge in the air, and kind of just dunk on people. So it's going to be very, very stylish, a very fun weapon to kind of mess with, to get clips with, make a montage, whatever. Like, will it be really good and competitive? No, probably not. Is it just going to be a great time? Yes, especially like if the like moon jump challenge, whatever, the low gravity challenge comes back, you get to just jump super high. This seems like such a fun time. So again, not a whole lot to say here. Funny kit, like fun weapon, fun special. It's just going to be a good time. Custom E-Leader. Here's one that I have a bit more thoughts on. Generally in this game, I'm just not a big fan of E-Leader. It feels like as a main weapon, it's very slow. In a game that is very fast, especially when like right now Tacticooler exists, so like your opponent kind of respawns at the same time it takes you to charge a shot. So getting a kill sometimes barely even feels impactful. That being said, I think this is about one of the best kits they could have given it to keep up with the pacing of the game. This is the same custom E-Leader kit from Splatoon 1, by the way, Beacon and Kraken. Beacon just helps it. I used E-Leader as an example in my Beacon guide I made. Thanks, Shiny, for your Beacon clips from Splatoon 2 custom E-Leader for that. How like Beacon lets E-Leader be really creative in its positioning, kind of just put them in certain like snipe positions you want to take, and when you feel pressured or if you need to rotate, normally it's a not very mobile weapon. Again, your charge time is crazy slow, you're a heavyweight weapon, your move is generally slow, but if you have Beacon set up ahead of time, you can just kind of reposition to safety, reposition to a new angle to take on the opponent and catch them off guard. All sorts of creative stuff you can do with Beacon. And then Kraken as well, kind of like in Splatoon 1, was a nice panic button for it. If you start to get like distance closed on you and it makes you feel unsafe, if you don't have a beacon to jump out to, I don't think you can do time, you just pop Kraken, and that's your sort of way to say, hey, I'm unkillable for 8 seconds, get off me. It's sort of just like Uno reverse card thing. Is it pretty lame? Yes. Is it effective? Yes. Furthermore, this has the potential to be one of the most obnoxious clan blitz weapons in the game, in my opinion. Another thing, kind of like Reef Slider cheese on zones, that's sort of been taking off. Kraken cheese and Rainmaker has definitely been taking. Oh, not Rainmaker, but Clan Blitz. Kraken cheese and did I say Rainmaker before as well? I meant Clan Blitz. Kraken cheese and Clan Blitz is going to be really obnoxious with this, because you're a very long range weapon with E-Leader, so you can build special safely from a long distance. not having to engage too much to get it. You can Kraken under the basket, give super jumps to your teammates, and then as your Kraken ends, instead of having to be stuck there and fight, you can just jump out to a beacon and be pretty unpunishable. It'd be a very small window that you're actually punishable during the time. So this is just going to be really annoying. It is going to get a lot of Krakens, give a lot of jumps, and jump out itself and not be punished. So yeah, this, for Charger players who know how to handle the weapon, if they start to see that pattern themselves, that application themselves in that mode, this could get pretty annoying. And overall, I think Snipe Rider, again, is far and away the best Charger, the one you'll see by far the most in competitive play. But there's something here for those who know how to handle E-Leader well and can justify playing it, despite its slow speed. If you're good enough at the weapon, this might be enough to justify it. Sorry. Yeah. So overall, it's going to be annoying to fight, but I'm happy E-Leader main's got something finally. Next, custom Explosion. Okay, this one's a completely different tone. People have been looking at this saying, why is this added to the game? It is bad. It's not going to be good and competitive. They're completely right. This is not added for competitive players. And that, again, is something we need to remember. Competitive players are a very small population of this game's player base. This is very much a training wheels Explosion. Explosion is a very hard weapon to pick up. It is very position dependent. It has a very particular range that it functions well at, very particular positions it needs to play. And if you misplay that at all, you're very punishable. You're very slow. You don't have an assured one shot. It's super easy to get rushed down as Explosion and just die. This kit, the whole point of it is to say your positioning can be shit. You can still do something. Splash Wall can let you kind of exist in the open and not get immediately punished. It's harder to get rushed down if you have a wall between you and your opponent. Triple Splashdown is a nice panic button, especially against lower levels of players who might not be able to delete it consistently. You trade out or kind of Uno reverse situations evenly where you're supposed to die and you splash down instead and get the kill instead. So this is for all sorts of lower level players and casuals that have wanted to try Explosion but feel like the main kit is way too hard, way too fragile. This is your time to try the weapon and have some fun with it. That is what this kit is for. So do I wish Explosion players, the very few of them that exist in higher level competitive, do I wish they had something fun, some extra kit to work with? Yeah. I also think their vanilla kit is probably one of the best ones they could have. Anyway, they can only be so upset. Again, this is one of these moments that this weapons is blatantly not made for comp. It's made for the vast majority of players that are not ourselves. So okay, just sometimes we need to remember that one. Again, unfortunate for those who like the weapon and wanted a very competitively viable option. Very fortunate for way more people than that. So at least your main weapon is going to have a greater population now. For example, with Reflex Deco, people are this is the worst thing ever made. In terms of competitive, they're just about right. But in terms of overall player base, I've seen a lot of Reflex Deco and Open and Turf War, Splatfest ever since it was added. It is quite popular. And again, that's why some of these kits that we don't think are good are very great for other people. That is the game we're playing. And I personally think the game being designed for the vast majority of its player base rather than a small corner of it that's very ungrateful no matter what is probably a better way to go about it. Yeah. Do I think this is good? No. In terms of viability, do I think it makes perfect sense and will be played and people will appreciate it that aren't me? Yes. And that is a nuanced opinion that most people on the internet don't seem to be able to have. Anyway, something that I think is more interesting for me, Redringer D or Dolphin, whatever. This, again, I wanted Torpedo as much as the next guy. I probably wanted it more than the next guy. I love sloshers. I love Dread. I'm basically making them competitive right now. It would have been sick to have Torpedo Crab Take or something like that. I would have been a war criminal with it and probably win tournaments. That being said, we got Beacon Wavebreaker. Let's think about it. For me, okay, I want to actually start with the special. Because I don't know why people don't like Wavebreaker on this. Well, I know why. People tend to have overall, the way I hear people talk about kits in this game, it's they have a rating for the main weapon, a rating for the sub, and a rating for the special. Oh, this main weapon's good or bad. This sub is good or bad. This special is good or bad. And it's all isolated. Again, weapon kits are kits. It's one collective identity that comes from it. You have to consider how it interacts with the particular main weapon. I don't care if Wavebreaker is bad on Custom Junior. I'm playing Dreadringer. Let's think about what it does here. I've never quite understood that. Because, Wavebreaker, so people are saying it doesn't combo with the main weapon. Dude, you do 90 damage. Like, Wavebreaker does 45 on a hit. Dread does like 48 or 42 depending on the trail, but if you're upset that it doesn't combo off just one hit, I genuinely argue skill issue. Like, it's not that hard to hit 90s with Dread. It really isn't. Especially when they're marked, which is what Wavebreaker does. So in terms of like comboing with the main weapon, like in terms of fights, like yeah, I think Wave is actually really nice. On top of that, the very recent like change to Wavebreaker last patch to give it the giant scan around it is really helpful here, because Dread, like, for being like a more traditional slosher in the sense of like there's a trail you could flick slosh, kind of like with vanilla slosher, it's quite limited, because like vanilla slosher could do like crazy wide flicks, like nearly 180 degrees of like a curve. Dread like has a much smaller one, like it has two, so it ends up kind of being spaced out, but there's a lot more dead zones, a lot more clunky. So basically all that to say is that in application, Dreadringer isn't great at dealing with like horizontal areas, like wide spaces. Compared to other sloshers, like Tri has a crazy widespread, V slosh can slosh super well, Machine has machine hitboxes. Like Dread is pretty hard to like pressure vertically, kind of like a long space. It's usually kind of shooting straight forward or very slightly straight forward, because especially as well, like you're encouraged to double up your damage. You want to be hitting 90s a lot. Another reason to not flick a lot. It shoots a lot more in straight lines than your average slosher does. So having something that's just a massive like horizontal scan, for example, think of like a retake situation, to throw down Wavebreaker and just have that immediate information, like, okay, like think like Hagglefish Market, like you're coming out of your spawn on like Plat, and there could be enemies like on your ramp, there could be enemies underneath the canopy, the tarp, there could be like, or anywhere underneath a ledge along that. Like currently, Dreadringer doesn't have many options to deal with that. You kind of just spam random sloshes and hope you get lucky. Throw a Wavebreaker down, get that scan, see where enemies are along that, and you immediately know where you're targeting. Which again just like helps address a big like gap there in terms of where it can pressure. So that is quite welcome to me. And again, also like the marking will never be unappreciated. The 45 combos well with 90 if you just hit both your hits, with your sloshes. It's also just a very quick special to use, so you just throw it out, faster ink tank refill, kind of like screen on Flingza. Like, I don't know, it seems okay. I'm not too upset. And then there's Beacon. Beacon, this is the first time a Beacon has ever appeared on a slosher, like in the entire series. Splatoon 1, Splatoon 2, never had a Beacon on a slosher. So this is the first one. Which just already inherently is pretty interesting. The other thing too is, that might just be because I got that cool clip at Genesis like last weekend, like looking at the map and getting a fall off shot. But like I swear, I feel like there could be some very fun shenanigans here with using Beacon to check the map, because beacons reveal opponents on the map like within a pretty sizable radius around them. So you can just slap down a beacon on one side of a wall or like above a ledge or something like that, and just see if an enemy appears on the map around it. And if so, you just kind of know where to aim your shots. Like for example, I think this is going to be like one of the most obnoxious weapons on Flounder Heights like ever. Because Wavebreaker is really nice on Flounder because it covers the walls, and it's really hard to dodge Wavebreaker waves like on the wall, like climbing up to the top of the map, because you can't really like jump over it. It kind of forces you to like just drop away, and it really slows you actually getting on top mid again to contest it. And then Beacon is great on that map because you can kind of just put it like anywhere, and because it's so cramped on top mid and get people climb walls and kind of shark a lot, you kind of just look at map and see where they're coming from. Like if you get this into like the attic area or like the roof area on like right side of the map, and just put a beacon there behind the wall where it's covered, and you can see people climbing up like any side, and just kind of like pre-fire sloshes over that wall to kill those people as they're coming up. Like, this is awesome. I don't know. This is a crazy amount of information for a slosher to have. Again, sloshers information's a dangerous thing to give to a slosher, because it'll find a way to hit you, especially Dread. So many hitboxes, so many large hitboxes at that. Its hit detection is larger than the normal slosher is. It'll be fun. It'll be super fun. Like, again, I said it several times. Just me acknowledging this will be fun and like has its niche mean I think it's crazy broken? No, not at all. But as somebody who likes sloshers, I see the unique niche this brings to the class, like unique playstyles and options that I've never seen before in the entire series, and damn am I excited to try it. Like I might use it one in every 100 competitive games. Like maybe if for whatever reason I have to play Flounder Zones again, hopefully never. But if I do in a competitive context, I might genuinely consider this, because I think it'd be better than a lot of other slosher options on that map because the particular synergies there. Or something like that. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna have fun with it. I won't expect it to be broken. If it is, I'll be very pleasantly surprised. But just gonna mess with it. Playing a game, man. Like I don't know. I'm excited. Anyway, Nautilus 79 up next. Another one that people acted like killed their families. Suction Bomb and Triple Splashdown. I also, with this one, I don't actually think it's that bad. Again, not meta defining, but if you're a Nautilus player, I feel like this is workable. Like, Nautilus is mostly played for the main weapon. It's really broken of a main weapon. It's super good at killing. It paints well. It's mobile. It kind of just does everything. Like, at least against other short range and mid range options, it kind of just melts them, just strong arms them. It feels really unapproachable in the right hands. You have Suction Bomb back, which is a great tool to paint, great tool to dislodge people from behind cover and force them to engage you. Like, the main and the sub combination is really fine here. Like, that in itself, you could have this have no special, and this would still be annoying to fight because it's just such a strong presence on the map, very lethal presence in general. And then giving it triple splashdown, like, again, it's no Zuka, it's no Inkjet, it's no Crab. It's not going to be getting kills for you outside of your range that you might have wanted, but it's still just like you get to kind of just go fight more and say like, okay, I'm gonna get 2 kills, get greedy. Like, literally, most Nautilus players I saw, especially Splatoon 2, were just like notorious for just greeting kills. Like, they would get a double and they'd go for the quad. They're like, I want the quad. I'm holding a crazy weapon. I'm cracked at the game. Like, give it to me. Having split triple splashdown says to go do that. Because, like, if you find yourself in a terrible situation, you just pop Splashdown. Sure, you might die, but if you die, it's unlikely the opponent will break all the fists. You might just trade them out, or they might respect the Splashdown being popped, not want to mess with it, and back away, and you get to live despite being in a terrible situation. But this is literally just like the Hordy overextending Nautilus player kit. Like, this is meant to just go greed your kills and flex your talent on your main weapon. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's okay. I'm sort of curious to see what people might do with it, because I hate fighting Nautilus. Like, for one, it's really obnoxious, especially on sloshers, because it tends to catch you out with your like, lower than average like strafe speed. Very easy for them to shoot you. So I hate the matchup. But like, that being said, like, I feel like people who are really cracked at Nautilus, like, go ahead and try it, have some fun with it. Like, it should be a good time. If nothing else, it's gonna be crazy in solo queue. Like, this is a solo queue monster. This is just 25 kills against every Timmy lobby every day. So yeah, I don't know. It's there. Like, again, ideal, not at all. Meta, not at all. Fine, makes sense. Honestly, yes. And going next now to Deco. Sorry, I mentioned it before with the buff. This one has Trizuka, and it comes with point sensor. If you want more in-depth thoughts on this, I'm just going to point you in the direction of Krim I was talking about before, my friend and teammate, who is very good at Gluga. They are very excited about this. This kit, and I can sort of briefly explain why, but again, they all have much better thoughts and their own analysis and stuff like that. I think they already posted one, but Gluga is pretty ink hungry. It is also just generally, again, like saying before, it's very much like it doesn't play too much to paint. It plays mostly just to kill. It has a nice, like, the kill time for it at the range it plays at with turret stance. It's pretty ridiculous. You have 52 gal kill time, but at like the range of like a Nautilus, which is pretty crazy. So it mostly just looks to roll around, find kills, find fights constantly. And Sensor is going to help with that, because Sensor is very cheap, it's very fast acting, and it's very thorough in finding opponents. So currently, like, Gluga, one of its main problems is trying to clear corners, trying to clear ledges, kind of like being thorough in the way it advances into space, scales into space, as it's trying to like fight. It's very easy to like currently shark out a Gluga, kind of get behind it as they're running forward, and kind of just jump on them like that, and like kind of close distance. Being able to chuck sensors at common positions as you're trying to move forward to kind of make sure no one's there, or check corners to make sure no one's sharking there before you keep going. It's going to be fast. Again, you don't really have to worry much about recovering ink because sensor's pretty cheap. And also, again, is pretty fast acting. It's pretty like large area. It works through walls. If it's someone still within the space, if you throw it outside of walls, it's still going to mark them. It's very easy just to chuck a sensor with like one brain cell devoted to it. Just spend the rest of your time just focused on shooting people. So it's going to just help Glugo farm crazy KA, keep playing fast. This is very much a full QR. I'm getting 800 paint this game, maybe 900 now at the buff, and I'm just going to get 25 KA and just be constantly fighting, be really annoying, be really assertive about this presence. So people who are good at Glugas, who can hit those shots and know how to engage with it, like, this will make you play really efficiently. And again, the special is Trizuka. I don't need to explain that too much. This plays even further into the I don't paint a lot, but I definitely kill a lot. And this thing is just like a fighting demon. If you have mechanics on Gluga, this will just let you send that to the moon. It's way less patient than the vanilla kit that waits behind like Splash Wall and Booyah Bomb, can play a lot more to kind of bait and punish enemies. It's just in your face. It is fighting. It is going fast. It is looking to kill you. If it doesn't get 20 kills, it probably messed up. So Yeah, for the few people out there who are good at Gluga, I'm genuinely kind of worried about this. As well, another thing as well with Trizuka that people have tested and confirmed, it does cancel out the end lag. So if you like double dodge roll and end up in turret stance, you could just Trizuka to immediately start being able to move again. That is pretty terrifying. Another thing to consider is that Trizuka indirects do 53 damage with the splash damage. One Gluga shot in turret stance does 52 damage. And they recently buffed it to where Gluga's fall off is way better. It takes a lot longer to lose damage. So even at max range, you can kind of Gluga fall off, or like Gluga turret stance hit someone once, and then just Trizuka indirect them once, and they're just gonna die. Again, this is a crazy lethal weapon. Like Gluga's seen as a meme. I understand it. Like it feels clunky to use, but again, to those who are good at this weapon, like if anything in this list, honestly, if anything in this list of new kits is going to take off, like minus E-Leader, because E-Leader players are going to play their weapon no matter what. Like aside from this, I'm honestly most worried about Glue. It is for people who are good at this thing. I'm genuinely this is a big threat. I'm interested to see how this goes. Oh, they actually do have the kits here. I feel like normally they don't have the kits for the new main weapons. I said they didn't show it earlier when I was talking about them here. They actually do. So yeah, Akemine Killer Whale on Dowser, and go shoot a big bubble on our Psycho Brill. We've already talked about that. So yeah, there you go. There's the new kits. There's my thoughts on them. And general opinions on what's going on with the game. Yeah, trying to think if I have any like final thoughts. I just it's mostly just the fact that like guys, I don't know. Again, we're being so crazy negative out there. And I like dude made a video about it. A lot of people are making posts about it. I mean, it just I feel like to me it's just like again I want to be good. Like I'm a competitive player. I get paid to coach people in this game. I want to win tournaments. I practice a lot. Like I want to be good. I know the things that makes a good weapon, but yet like I just find it fun to like think about these things. I just genuinely love the game. I would rather see something that's suboptimal and be like, if I see an opponent run this, like what are they thinking? Or is it being added to the game that I love? Like what are the devs thinking? Like try to actually figure that out and just engage with that intellectually rather than just like shit talk things I don't understand or like things that aren't relevant to me. There's a number of people that are like trash talking Dread D as if they're going to play it at all. Like for example, stuff like that. Like it doesn't matter to you. You're never going to pick this weapon anyway. This is for the slosher players, and myself as a slosher player, I can see this kit and say, damn, that's a niche I've never had before. That's really interesting that it's here now. Even if I don't use it a lot, like I'm glad this exists. It does flesh out the class. Like, is it that hard to understand? I don't know. It just, man, the negativity out there is insane. Even from other content creators, like again, just it really upsets me that people who try to push this game and try to teach people like are just so openly negative about everything. Trying to shut down things before they even exist. Try to make it to like you're trying to teach people about the game, but then you also act like your own perspective of the game, the own level that you compete at, is the only one that exists. Like I think you're doing a huge disservice to everyone. Like you can't say like I'm trying to teach casuals how to play the game, but I'm going to say custom explosion sucks because it's not usable at top level competitive. Like, no, I feel like it's your duty if you're trying to teach people the game to see like custom explosion might actually make sense for you, and if you see it in your solo lobbies, this is why. Like, that feels more relevant to actually fostering growth and understanding of the game, in my opinion. I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of repeating myself, kind of beating a dead horse, but genuinely, like, I hate the attitudes of people out there. Again, you say this stuff in a lot of spaces. Like that's why I like saying this in video format, because I say in a tweet that like this thing is interesting and people think I'm going like I'm saying something completely different. Like for example, there's a bug fix that I tweeted about. To is it here? That is in player controls where they did this undercover. There's a big bug there we go with undercover for a while that they fixed as effectively a buff. To where when you were shooting like continuously and your shield recharges, it like reset your shot cooldown, so you'd have a longer pause than normal between shots when your shield came back. They fixed this bug. I tweeted about it. I was like, this is really nice. This is a nice buff for undercover. And someone was like, damn bro, that's awesome. Time to go push undercover, even though the main weapon sucks and its kits are useless. I didn't say that undercover is going to be meta. I didn't say it's broken. I said, hey, here's a cool change you might have missed, and it's nice for the people who care about the weapon. Like, the fact that I had a positive opinion meant, like, surely I think this is broken now. It's like, no, I'm just sharing something about the game that I think is cool, and I like messing with undercover casually. It's fun, so I appreciate this. Like, I don't know. It's just the polarizing shit. You should either hate the game and everything the devs stand for, or you think this niche thing is secret meta and like play it now. It's like, no, I just like the game and like thinking about it and like appreciating it, man. Like Yeah. Oh. Again, getting redundant here. Overall, the game will not be crazy shaken up by that. That's what the very top players are mad about. If you're watching this video, spoiler alert, you're not a top player. Those like dozen people in the West that I would consider that have way better things to do than listen to me talk about the game for an hour. So these probably actually do matter to you. Or at the very least, to some capacity, you might see these in solo queue or something like that. So it's probably still in your best interest to at least understand why they exist. And probably also in your best interest to have an open mind about the game, because the top players will always be better at the meta that they made than you will be. So you should probably think about trying to counter it. Yeah, there you go. Passive aggressive, also quite not passive aggressive, quite direct rants out of the way. Again, those are my patch thoughts. Thank you for listening to like the 24 people out there that care for this. I just like talking. I just like thinking about this stuff. So I'm gonna do this no matter what. Yeah, hope you all have a good day. Also, hope that my quality on this was better. I've applied some filters since last time because the audio was quite scuffed, and I'm still learning how to use my new mic. But again, hopefully this sounds a fair bit better. Let me know what you think. Yeah, all have a good day.